It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
50 years ago, 600 million people around the world watched on live television as Apollo 11 astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, took those historic first footsteps on the moon. Yet some of the most intriguing details from the Apollo 11 saga remain largely unknown or poorly understood. Here are 10 things about the Apollo 11 mission you might not know. President Kennedy didn't really care about the moon. In public, President John F. Kennedy made soaring speeches about going to the moon. But in private, he was a pragmatic politician more focused on earthly concerns. Everything we do ought to be tied into getting to the moon ahead of the Russians, he told NASA Administrator James Webb in a 1962 White House meeting. I'm not that interested in space. The Apollo 11 crew had to hawk their autographs for life insurance. Buying insurance isn't easy when you're about to shoot into space atop a flaming rocket. With no better option, Armstrong, Aldrin, and their Apollo 11 crewmate Michael Collins resorted to cashing in on their fame. They signed hundreds of envelopes and then had friends postmark them July 20th, figuring that the autographs would be valuable enough to provide for their families if the men didn't return. The lunar spacesuits were created by a lingerie company. Playtex, a company better known for inventing the Cross Your Heart bra, was hired to create the suits that would protect astronauts from the moon's airless environment and temperature extremes. Playtex Industrial Division, ILC Dover, has designed every NASA spacesuit since then. NASA officials worried they might blow up their spectators. The massive rocket used for the moon missions almost shook itself apart during the Apollo 6 test flight in 1968. So NASA knew that a launch pad explosion was a real possibility. VIP guests, including Vice President Spiro Agnew and former President Lyndon Johnson, were seated 3.5 miles away from the pad during the Apollo 11 liftoff. Aldrin took communion on the moon. The very first liquid ever poured on the moon, and the very first food eaten there, were the communion elements, the astronaut later wrote in Guideposts magazine. A felt-tip pen rescued the astronauts. In the cramped confines of the lunar module, Armstrong's backpack smashed against the ascent engine arming switch and broke it off. With no obvious fix, the astronauts improvised a solution by inserting a pen into the small opening where the circuit breaker switch should have been. Aldrin and Armstrong left their poop and pee behind. According to NASA's catalog of man-made material on the moon, the Apollo 11 moonwalkers left behind a vomit bag, 2 urine collectors, and a defecation collection device. In total, NASA says the 6 Apollo missions that put men on the moon left behind 96 bags of human waste. NASA quarantined the astronauts for fear of moon plague. The idea was to protect Earth from possible lunar germs, even though NASA scientists seriously doubted there could be life on the moon. But the procedures were a bit of a sham, Collins noted in a recent interview, because any dangerous microbes would have escaped the moment the returning astronauts emerged from their capsule.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House.
President Nixon was ready for Apollo 11 to end in disaster. 2 days before the moon landing, Nixon's speechwriter William Safire penned remarks for the president to deliver in case Armstrong and Aldrin were left stranded on the moon. The letter sits in the National Archives. The U.S. flags, put on the moon by Apollo astronauts, are still standing, except for the one from Apollo 11. Armstrong and Aldrin had struggled to plant the flagpole in the unexpectedly hard lunar soil. Aldrin later said he had seen the wobbly flag topple when hit by rocket exhaust from the lunar module as it ascended from the surface.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.